Welcome to the Workology Podcast, a podcast for the disruptive workplace leader. Join host Jessica Miller-Merrell, founder of Workology.com, as she sits down and gets to the bottom of trends, tools, and case studies for the business leader, HR, and recruiting professional who is tired of the status quo. Now here's Jessica with this episode of Workology.
Welcome to the Workology Podcast, sponsored by ACE the HR Exam and Upskill HR. These are two of the courses that I offer for certification prep and recertification for HR leaders. And you can learn more about these courses over at Workology.com. Check them out. Let me know if you have any questions. Now, in this episode, we're talking about setting boundaries in the workplace and all of the things that go along with needing to do so. That might be learning to do so, having to do so, but boundary setting. You and I both know that HR is a high stress, high burnout job, and getting leadership and the workforce on the same page about everything is, well, challenging. And we are always getting in the middle. I mean, it is kind of our jobs, right? Do we just call our EAP? Do we need training? Do our leaders need training? What about our whole workforce? I have questions today, and that's why I invited our guest who will be joining us. Now, before I introduce our guest for today, I do want to hear from you. Please head on over to my Instagram. It's at Workology Blog, and comment podcast on the pinned post over on my Instagram account to ask questions, leave comments, and make suggestions for future guests. I want to hear from you. So today's guest, I'm so excited to have her on, is Sarah Harris. Sarah is a licensed clinical social worker, LCSW, and a workplace culture advocate, passionate about empowering organizations to prioritize employee well-being and focus on actionable strategies. She helps leaders create environments where individuals feel valued, they feel supported, and they are motivated to thrive. Sarah has conducted training for small as well as large organizations, including the National Association of Social Workers Georgia State Conference, the Professional Family Care Alliance of Georgia Information Systems Security Association, Greater Augusta Chapter, and the Central Savannah River Area, it's CSRA Chapter of the Society for Human Resources Management, or SHRM. With over 2 decades of experience specializing in things like anxiety, depression, and trauma, Sarah also maintains a clinical practice treating individual adults. Sarah, welcome to the Workology Podcast. I'm so excited to have you on today.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I really do appreciate the invitation. It is such an honor to be here.
Of course. And I feel like we have so many different things to talk about today. And I'm so excited to tap into your expertise, because I feel like this is one that not a lot of HR leaders are talking about, but they might be silently telling themselves or over cocktails or conversations with a friend. So I want to ask you about what are some of the biggest people-related challenges you see right now that HR is facing, and maybe how they can help build the skills to navigate these challenges.
Yeah. I think that people-related factor is a big deal, right? One of the first things that I notice are the businesses that either started family owned, so started really small, and then grew, which is fabulous. We love seeing businesses that grow, but they grow without the muscle needed to function as a larger organization. So they continue to function as a small family-run business where they need to adapt a little bit. And one of the other things that I see a lot is the disconnection between frontline workers and what their behaviors do to impact the overall workplace. For example, I was talking to an HR manager the other day, and she said, I had to send my line workers, she works for a technology company that runs lines out in the field, and she said, I had to send them to communication training because they're out in front of other businesses that we work with, out in the public space, cursing and worried about, oh, this customer is this way, and I don't like coming over here. And she said, then we don't get the repeat business because the workers are out there doing the thing. So there's a lot of disconnection, I think, with that. How does my behavior as a frontline employee impact the overall bottom line? I remember I even saw that when I used to work for a hospital organization. We would sometimes make errors in our billing, which, is to be expected. But a lot of times it was just because we were hurried and we weren't taking our time. And somebody in billing came by and said, let me show you the impact on the patient's paperwork. What do they see? And they saw a line charge and then a cancel, and then a line charge and then a cancel. And I thought, oh gosh, I don't want that. I don't want that for our customers to be so confused about what their bill means. So those are some of the big issues. I think as far as how to resolve them, it really boils down to communication. So sitting down and having small group discussions with your employees in small clusters so that everybody gets a chance to talk. And in these small groups, what I always tell my leaders is stop talking. Don't talk during these meetings. Ask the open-ended question. What is it that I can be doing better as your leader to help support you in this area? So if we make the statements as a leader that indicates that they do not believe that they are perfect, they do not believe that they have all the answers, but that the front line does have the answers, that they are the ones with boots on the ground, and give them the open format so that they can express that. I think that would go a long way. So if we look back at those family-owned businesses that I mentioned a moment ago, if we say, hey, we're noticing a really high turnover in our younger employees, and what they're saying to us is, well, I tried to streamline this and I was told, no, that's not the way we do it. And so when those newer generations are trying to use technology and trying to say, well, why are we writing all this down? Or why are we doing this form 4 times in 4 different versions? Can't we streamline this a little bit? And the old school way goes, but that isn't the way we've been doing it. Then we really get stuck.
I feel like the listening is a secret skill that business leaders of all levels, but especially senior, really need to invest some time in. And I know that is a challenge because we're used to being listened to, not using our listening skills. People look to us for the answers and resources and direction of the company, but listening and empathy go a long way in building those relationships with our employees.
Mm-hmm. They very much do. And the listening skills are teachable, which is fabulous. So it's really a matter of the way that I explain it to folks is we actually listen the opposite way that we talk. And what I mean by that is when we talk, we start with a point. And our 3rd grade English teachers taught us start with a point, do 3 supporting sentences, and then do your conclusion. Well, that's the way we talk, which works out great when we're speaking. Mm-hmm. What doesn't work is the way that we listen is we listen to that first sentence, and then we start making judgments about it. Oh, what's my opinion on that? What do I think about that? Oh, I want to make sure that they know this about what I think about that. And they don't hear the supporting and they don't hear the conclusion. And so what I find most often is when I force people to stop and listen all the way through, most of the time they end up realizing they agreed with the speaker when they didn't think they did. And so when we can really switch that over and start to listen more in line with the way that we speak, then that goes a long way.
Awesome. Let's talk about boundaries next in human resources, because I feel that there are some really common themes around boundaries that maybe you were seeing in HR. And I wondered, as an expert in this area, how can practitioners begin to set healthy limits and boundaries without feeling guilty? Because I will tell you, when I was in corporate, I thought I was being a really great employee by leaving my cell phone number for the evening or the overnight crew to be able to call me. I was a team player. But what ended up happening is I didn't have any time off. And then once I did that, how do you backpedal away from those things? So talk to us about some boundary issues and maybe how we can set these healthier limits.
Yeah, I love your example there, Jessica, of giving the cell phone out for everybody. In this day and age of technology, we are so accustomed to all access all the time. And understanding, putting some boundaries around that access is very, very important. So the first thing that you can do is, if you are the person that somebody is supposed to call in a crisis, in an emergency of some sort, clearly define what that is. So what is the emergency situation? If the building's on fire, yes, please call me. If the building's not on fire and everything else is handled for now and it can be answered at 8 o'clock tomorrow, please don't call me. Don't let me know. I don't want to know about it. Right? So decide what your emergency definitions are so that people know when it's appropriate to reach out to you and when it's not. I also usually suggest, as far as receiving messages, feel free to screen them. So even with my clinic, calls get screened. Leave me a voicemail. If it is a clinical emergency, I will get back to you immediately. Like, listen to the voicemail, hit send, and I call you right back. If it is simply hey, I can't make it to an appointment in 3 days, I don't need to talk to you right now. And so really setting those definitions about when and how people can reach you and under what circumstances you will respond. Along that same line, one of the biggest platforms that I have on communication digitally is doing a delayed send on your emails. If you don't know how to do that, ask the youngest member of your team and they will be able to show you how to do it. But using a delayed send allows any of us who say, well, if I don't get this idea out right now, then I'm going to forget and they need to know this information. Awesome, cool, get it out. I have no problem with that. But because we have all access all the time, many of us will pick up our phones, we will check the email at 8 o'clock at night when we're sitting there with our family watching a movie. And even if leadership says, I don't need you to respond right now, or this can wait till tomorrow, I'm sorry, but the mental load of knowing the information still disrupts their downtime. And so hit the delayed send, have it send it to the person at 8 o'clock or whatever your business hours are the next day. So you as the sender still get to get your things out there when you're thinking about it, but the receiver doesn't get interrupted in what they are doing with their own downtimes. I think that the other thing that we really need to push for is stopping the normative behavior of taking lunch breaks at our desks. So if you go through any major office setting between the hours of 11 and 1, you will see a large number of folks sitting there with their lunches from home or their lunches from out, sitting at their desks, still trying to work and eat lunch. And so when you asked about how do I do this without guilt, it is about defining what your boundaries are and why, and then modeling them as well. So all leaders should walk away during lunch. Let your employees see, I have walked away. I am going to a break room. I'm going to a restaurant. I'm going outside for a walk, whatever it is. You don't have to announce it to everybody every time you do it, but people will notice. They will notice, oh, the boss gets up and goes and sits somewhere else for 30 minutes. Therefore, it's okay for me to get up and go sit somewhere else for 30 minutes. And it really allows your whole system to reset. So I think those are two of the biggest things that I would suggest.
And they're small things that don't cost a lot of money. Leading by example, number one, and then leveraging technology. Slack has messages that you can schedule. I'm assuming that Copilot is the same way. I recently learned that I'm an iPhone user, that iPhone finally got the feature to be able to send text messages later. So if you haven't seen this new feature, it came out in September of last year. So schedule those messages to come out the next day, not at 11:30 when you're like, oh, shoot, I forgot this one more thing that I need to let my team know. And it makes a huge difference on people's peace of mind. How many times have you gotten an email back at 11:30 and there's that need to, I should just respond real quick. But then it sets that expectation that you're available all the time. And we shouldn't be.
Right. Yeah. It's both that expectation that you're giving to the other person, as well as the expectation that you start giving to yourself. Well, I replied to Jane 3 weeks ago at 10 o'clock at night, and now Bill is sending me something. So I guess I need to reply to Bill as well, because Jane and Bill sit next to each other.
Yeah. And they're going to talk about me, and they're going to say, Sarah's so helpful because she's always available. And then Jane's going to be like, hey, Sarah's not available for me. What's up with that? You shared a story with me about needing to pause before handling an urgent employee issue. That kind of self-awareness, I feel like, is really powerful. What would you say to HR pros who feel like they need to respond to everything instantly? Because I know that somebody's going to say, yes, but to our earlier conversation, how do you respond to those folks?
So this is where kind of I have a unique perspective on it, because I really talk to my folks about what is actually happening in their nervous system at a biological level. When you respond immediately, there is actually a way that your brain processes information. It engages with the sensation first, the emotion second, and the logic and reasoning third. Every experience that you have, your brain experiences it in that order. And so when we do a knee-jerk response and we say, I got to go run and do this thing because I just read this email and now I have to call so-and-so into the office, we are still functioning out of sensation and emotion. And logic and reasoning is actually shut off. Part of your brain doesn't actually even function. So that's why in really big things like a car accident or something like that, if you're trying to talk to somebody about it, and you say, what happened? And they're like, I was driving. I don't know. I was there. They don't know. It isn't that they actually don't know. It's that part of the brain that processes language and reasoning doesn't turn on because we're still so heightened. So when we're in situations that have an emotional connection to them that is relatively intense, it is worth the time to calm that down so that when you bring that employee into your office or when you make that phone call, you have allowed time for that part of your brain that has logic and reasoning to actually be functioning. And then we sound like an intelligent human being. And so that's really, really important. And one of the tricks that I use even myself is during transitions. During any transition, I do a scan. It takes me 15 seconds, maybe. I do a quick little scan of my system. How am I doing? Where are my muscles tight? How's my breathing? And I do 3 or 4 long exhales, nothing really fancy, just to reset everything. And then I notice, okay, I've now taken a break from wherever my brain was before. I've now calmed down the emotional state of where I was. And now I'm ready to approach. So whether I'm transitioning from clients, if you ever come to one of my live workshops, I start every one of my live workshops with a breathing exercise. And that is just to get all of the participants back grounded to what it is that we're talking about. Because during whatever break we were in, everybody's scrolling their phones, they're checking their voicemails, they're doing all the things, and they're all kind of scattered. And so we really want to be able to be present with that and to sit and settle kind of in our brain and get that process going.
I love that we're talking about breath, and I am an advocate for less is more. And it could be something similar to maybe trying to take breaks in between meetings, even if it's a 5 or 10 minutes, just a few breaths before you move into maybe a heated conversation. It's just good to take a minute to let your body decompress and your mind, and just give yourself space. So it's amazing how just small changes like you're describing can really make an impact in maybe how you respond to a situation. or maybe advice or suggestions that you offer up if somebody's coming to you for support, especially as HR leaders. We get that a lot. Same people, right. Types of people over and over again with questions about FMLA, EAP. I need to terminate this person. This person's not performing. Our new hire didn't come to orientation. And constant stimulation and handling all these problems just coming into our Slack or our office every day, we can easily be overwhelmed.
Of course. And it is heavy to hold other people's distress. And so part of some of the things that we work on in being able to manage that is to offload the stress back onto the other person and recognize that I can be there for you and I can be supportive and I can be empathetic, but I don't have to own your emotional distress. And the breath work is just a component of that.
That's great. I love breath work. It's easy to do. It doesn't cost a lot of money, or it's free, and it can just take a couple minutes.
Yeah.
Along those lines, many HR leaders are burnt out. Right? The numbers are staggering of how many HR leaders are saying, yes, I have too much to do. I've overwhelmed. I'm overworked. I'm almost at the end of my rope. But I feel like a lot of us just keep pushing through, like despite all of those things. What warning signs should HR professionals look for in themselves when it comes to emotional fatigue or compassion fatigue?
Yeah, I think that, burnout very much is a key phrase in the workplace nowadays. So there's lots of articles about it. The things that you want to notice if you are experiencing increased errors. So all of us make mistakes. I don't expect anybody to be perfect, but if you're noticing that your error rates are going up, that's a key factor to burnout. Feeling fatigue when you're at work. I always ask people to do their blood work with their primary care physician first, and then we start addressing the mental health component. So assuming that all of your blood work is fine, fatigue is also a sign of burnout. Irritability, if you're just kind of on edge with folks, that is not generally your personality. That's another sign. And then decreased interest. So one of the things that I love to talk to people about is, why are you doing what you're doing? And I think that some people get into HR because they have always said, this is what I want to do. But a lot of the HR folks that I talked to came about it almost accidentally, just kind of like, oh yeah, I was going to do psychology and then I kind of got this job and this is what I ended up doing. And now I learned all these things. Or, I was pre-law and then I just kind of didn't really want to do all of law school. And so I went this direction. And so when I talk to people about decreased interest, I say, where is your passion? Where do you get excited? If there's a new training coming up, do you look at it with any kind of interest? Or are you looking at the new training going, how many more hours do I need to get so that I can check the boxes? And that's why I'm going to the training. If you're finding you're more of the latter, then you may be experiencing some burnout.
I think those are great examples and something for us to think about. And burnout, it isn't necessarily always forever. It kind of ebbs and flows. And I think that if we take our pause, maybe take a vacation every once in a while and disconnect. So not answering our phone for the evening crew that might have questions about benefit enrollment, save that for the next day. We are more likely to be less burnout because we have that space to pursue interests, passions, or even rest.
Yeah, and another thing that I would add to that, so all of those are great self-care measures. The other thing that you can do within your professional realm is to find a smaller aspect of the profession that you really want to learn more about. So if you kind of have a general understanding of disability and what the parameters are around disability, but you're not sure, you just kind of know that you have to have these things in place in your policies, but disability is interesting to you, then make sure that you're going to trainings around disability. Make sure that you're listening to podcasts that are talking about the impact of disability. Make sure that you're going and reading books or articles or anything like that. Really get yourself involved in being a subject matter expert in this one area. And a lot of times that will help to break that burnout cycle as well. Plus it gives you information that you get to use for your job.
Yeah, it's a win-win.
It is.
Let's take a reset. This is Jessica Miller-Merrell, and you are listening to the Workology Podcast, powered by ACE, the HR Exam, and Upskill HR. Today, we are talking with Sarah Harris about workplace boundaries. Let's get back to it. So you've worked in both clinical mental health and also leadership development. How do these two worlds inform each other in your approach to coaching and supporting HR leaders?
I think they're not that far apart, quite honestly. Because so much of the HR profession is about the people. It is a people-focused career field, and mental health is all about the people and how that's doing. So what I find is when I do coaching and trainings and things like that, I really try and blend over the neuroscience and human behavior science of people. And I find that really seamlessly kind of connects. So those examples that I was giving earlier about the nervous system, if you can understand why somebody is responding the way they are from a neuroscience understanding, then it makes a lot more sense. And then when they come into your office, you go, oh, okay. And sometimes, honestly, it's a matter of moving 6 inches over, so you're not sitting directly in front of them. So I could go on forever about what are some of those just little nuanced things that you can be doing that then calm everything down. And so when we're talking about the professions of interacting with people, whether it be the overworked person or the stressed out person, we're talking about all the same thing. What is the human experience there?
I have a teenager, so I feel like I'm forever testing different neuroscience in the field every day. So some work, some don't, some work, and then 2 days later they don't work again. So
100%. And really all of that is the implications of what's going on around in the environment. So, Snickers made a great commercial series there where it talked about being hangry, and they really built that out about what is the impact of, just kind of being hungry. And how do I respond to things? How do I respond to things if I just got into an argument with my partner? How do I respond to things if I just got a speeding ticket on my way to work? What are those environmental factors that are impacting the way that we interact with others?
For HR professionals who are listening, and maybe they feel stuck between being a policy enforcer, which happens a lot in our jobs, and a culture builder, what's one maybe mind shift example or a practical tool that they can use to help balance those roles?
Yeah, so I love talking about policies with HR folks because I always put it off on them and I say, look, you know what the laws and the rules are. I'm not touching that. That's not my job. My job is to get you to start thinking about policies through the human experience. What does this policy do to the human experience who is being made to follow the policy in any way, shape, or form? So if we are talking about EAP policies, for example, as a practicing clinician, I can tell you I get very frustrated when I get new client calls that say, I have 3 EAP sessions. I'm ready to do therapy. Awesome. So let me tell you a little bit. So this is what's going to happen. The first appointment, I'm going to get a basic history of you. The second appointment, if you decided to come back, we're going to set some treatment goals. And the third appointment, you are going to start telling me a little bit about your issue. So far, we have not made any progress in helping you to really change what it is that you're looking to change. So then on session 4, when I say, hey, now you need to use your health insurance benefits, you need to pay that copay, you need to pay your co-insurance, they go, oh, no, I don't want this. This didn't help me any. I don't think therapy is for me. Okay. Now, if as an HR rep, if I am investigating which EAP policies I want to implement or suggest that our business implements, then I'm looking for EAP policies that have 6 to 12 sessions. Again, I'm not saying that particular person's issues will be quote unquote resolved by then, but what I can say is that gives the clinician a fighting chance to get them invested in it, which then ties me into how we can start looking at what are we doing with time off, What are we doing with flexible work hours so that people can take care of the things that they need to take care of? And even here in Augusta, so just like a lot of Florida and the rest of Georgia and North Carolina, back in September when Hurricane Helene hit, it was really interesting conversations in the HR world and the business world, because a lot of people were working remotely. They had no power. They had no internet. We had no internet for 3 weeks. We had no power for 2 weeks. How am I supposed to do my job? So then businesses are stuck in a place where if I don't pay my employees, then they can't pay their bills and they don't want to work for me. But if I pay them and they're not working for me, then my business isn't gaining money. So I really challenge people to say, if we had a situation like that in the area, or any of our employees are in that kind of situation, how do we want to handle that? Is there a limit? Do we say, hey, you know what? We will pay you for, let's say, 14 business days in the case of a natural disaster. And then after that, you need to make other arrangements, or you need to take PTO or whatever that is, right? So really looking at, if you're feeling overwhelmed with being a policy enforcer, check on the policies. Do the policies feel like they are taking into consideration the human experience?
I think that's a great example. And honestly, for risk management, planning, and strategy, we should be thinking about these things. I'm in Texas, and we just had massive 100-year floods come through. And I guarantee you that most HR leaders haven't thought about this very thing. And many people don't have flood insurance. So they're already in a financially challenging position. And then you add in the fact that they might not be able to get paid because they don't have anywhere to stay, or they don't have access to internet. So,
and in this digital age, the other thing that comes up as well is, if I work for a company in Utah, but I'm in Texas with the floods, I don't have power and internet anymore, but Utah does, because they weren't impacted by the floods. And so really, as a corporation, if you have remote employees, understanding that where your brick and mortar location exists is not the office location of all of your employees.
Oh, absolutely. Even in a small area, right? Mm-hmm. Like the Austin area is huge. And Kerrville is an hour and a half for me. And I guarantee there are employees that were impacted, maybe that were driving into San Antonio or in the Austin area, that, they can't get to work right now. There's a whole community in north of Austin that has one road in and out that's a bridge, and it's only a walkable right now. So it's a lot of different situations that we don't necessarily expect, but we should plan for the unexpected so that we can be there to support our employees.
Right. Yeah.
I feel like I know where we're going to go with this question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. What changes would you like to see in how companies approach mental health support for employees? Like, if you could have a crystal ball where you could, or a wand, and make any change that you wanted, what would you like to see?
So as I mentioned earlier, my first request would be to consider what adaptations can you provide for your employees that allows them to take better care of their mental health. So if they have a mental health condition, which is defined as a diagnosable impact on their mental health, then we want them to be able to reach their service providers. So my clinic is only open during business hours on Tuesday through Friday. That's my office hours. And so my clients, most of them take an extended lunch, or they work a longer day the day before so that they can take an hour and a half to get on to their appointment and do those kinds of things. So having that flexibility, I'm not asking any leaders to be the therapist. Leave the therapy to the therapist. We don't need you to do that. We do need access for your employees to be able to take care of that. The other thing is, as funny as it sounds, I am totally against work-life balance, that phrase. And the reason I'm against the phrase is because it makes it sound like those two things are separate and different from each other, and they're not. So we really want to cultivate workplace cultures where there is life balance. So when my life takes me to work, when my life is time with friends, when my life is time with family, when my life is relaxation, what can I be doing to create that life balance? So that's one of the other things. And I think that the other major component is self-awareness. What is it going on with you as a leader for your mental health that day when you are interacting with somebody else? So one of the examples that I give a lot even is if somebody comes and knocks on your door and says, "Hey, Jessica, I'm having this really, complicated issue with my coworker. Can I come in?" And you promote yourself as having an open door policy and you invite them in. That sounds lovely. Except now your direct messaging is pinging, your teenager is buzzing your phone saying, "Where's the soap?" And you're all distracted, right? And hear this other person for their moment, right then in that moment, the most important thing is their crisis. And so one of the other things that you can really do for mental health of your employees is to be transparent and honest. Do I have the moment right now to give you the attention that you deserve? And sometimes it's a matter of, I need 5 minutes. You know what? Why don't you go get a cup of coffee? And I'm going to close my door. Let me finish up what it is that I'm working on here. It'll take me 5 to 8 minutes, and then I'll come get you at the coffee maker. Does that sound okay? And then we can have a conversation. People would much rather that they know that you are carving out that time for them, that they are important enough that you are going to put things aside, but they also respect the fact that you have the rest of your job to do and that they are not the only part of your job. And so if we can really work to appreciate that human factor, I think it would go a lot further.
I like how you're creating boundaries but giving an option, right? Like, let me finish up here. Is 5 minutes okay? I'll meet you in the break room. And that is a reasonable request. And that is so you can respond to things that are maybe pending, finish up, get to a stopping point, respond to your teenager about the soap. Okay. It's under the counter in the cabinet. And then you can shut your phone off for 15 or 20 minutes and give them the tension and the time that they really need in that moment. I was expecting, and I guess you alluded to this too, that you were going to say more EAP sessions, because if we only have 3 in most EAPs, and you're saying that we really don't even get to address some of the stuff and think about tools until the 4th, 5th, 6th, and so on. It sounds like to me that we need to maybe think about expanding some of our EAP options as well.
Yeah. I love it when I have the new client in my clinic who calls and says, "I have 6 EAP sessions. Can I get started?" Yeah. Yes, I can work with 6. I may not be able to resolve all your childhood trauma that's impacting your workflow right now in 6 sessions. I'm not quite that good, but I can get you to buy in, and I can get you to understand that the time and the finances that it takes to do therapy is worth the investment. And then if we plug that in with the flexible work hours, either, still get your 40 hours in, just work a little longer for a couple of days, or taking extended lunch breaks, or whatever that looks like, that works for your workplace. If we have all of that wraparound support, then that goes a really far way.
I do feel like if we did a poll and we said, have you tried therapy? Yes or no. And what did you think? The majority of the people who were like, it wasn't helpful are probably the people who only had under 6 sessions.
Yes.
I feel like it's the same thing about yoga and breath work too, but that's just my personal opinion. So sometimes it takes time to get comfortable and uncover some layers, or relax and be able to talk through with an expert like you.
Right.
When I did the intro, we talked about lots of workshops at things like SHRM chapters and beyond that you've done. What is one of your favorite aha moments that you've seen from HR professionals doing one of these sessions? Maybe something that really shifted their thinking.
One of the most fun ones for me is what I call the why tree. and it shifts the way that we check in with somebody's complaint. And so what we do, so somebody says, hey, Jane keeps leaving right at 5 o'clock. I know we're scheduled to end at 5, but oftentimes the work isn't done yet. But she has a child that's in childcare and she has to pick them up before 6. So she gets to keep leaving at 5 and I'm stuck here till 6:30 every night. Okay. So if I'm the HR professional or any leader who is responding to this complaint, I'm going to say, okay, what is it about Jane leaving at 5 that bothers you? And maybe they say, well, I have to stay because all the work has to get done before close of business. Okay. What is it about you having to stay that bothers you? So what we do is every single time they give us a response, we, without sarcasm, we have to ask them, what is it about that bothers you? And generally what will come down to, we'll know when the why tree is done, when we finally have a breaking point and somebody says, so this is really the issue, right? So in that scenario, the real issue is I'm single, I don't have children, and I feel like then I get everything extra on top of me, even though financially I'm being compensated. Everything else in my life is sacrificed because I'm the only one in the office without kids, right? That makes a lot more sense. It gives a leader something that they can work with. They're not going to magically give that employee children, but they can say, oh, well, let's restructure how work is getting done. Let's look at time management. Let's look at workload. Let's see what's happening here that is leading to these multiple days where anybody has to work late, you know?
I think that's great too, because so easy for the conflict to be about between those two people, right? And then the manager goes to that other employee and says, hey, you're leaving at 5. But I already got permission. So the issue or the concern or the rub that individual's having is not about the person who's leaving at 5 at all. Mm-hmm. It's about a number of different things, which we have to ask questions to learn what that is exactly about.
Yeah. So I really like that one. And the other one that I really, really like doing with folks is I work on an exercise where I stand next to them and have them experience from a nervous system approach. What does it feel like to have somebody when you're seated stand next to you? And when I ask people to really dial in and notice how their nervous system is responding, they're like, oh, I do not like this. I don't like this at all. This feels weird. This feels icky. Please get away from me. And literally, I will take a step back that is about 11 to 13 inches. And they go, oh, okay, that's a lot better. Yeah, can we do that? And so when we learn again about what's going on with the nervous system and how does that impact the way that our employees respond to us and whether or not they're on the defense and they're just in that sensation and emotion state, or are they in the logic and reasoning state? If I back off a foot, the brain gets to go, oh, now we can listen to logic and reasoning because now we're safe. If we're too close when we're standing next to somebody, then the brain is going, this is dangerous. I don't like this. We need to self-protect. Where can you escape to? What if I roll my chair over their foot? Will they back up? Like it's starting to go into all of the fight, flight, freeze mentality. And they actually don't listen to the content of what you're saying.
Well, no, because they're in that unsafe space. And it doesn't have to be physical proximity too. It could just feel threatened on a call, or maybe when HR is added to a meeting, a 15-minute meeting on your calendar before the end of a Friday, right? Like it doesn't really matter what that conversation is going to be about. It's going to elicit a lot of these feelings and emotions that people, like you said, aren't listening to logic and reason.
Yeah. So those moments are fun.
Well, Sarah, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today. Where can people go to learn more about you and the work that you do?
Yes. So I am very active on LinkedIn. I always encourage folks, I put a lot of tips and tricks, usually 4 to 5 a week, on my LinkedIn posts. And so you can find me on LinkedIn. Feel free to email me, Sarah Harris at sarahharrisspeaks.com, or look into the website, sarahharrisspeaks.com, and that is where I will post anything that I'm doing out in the media and things that I am doing out in public for public speaking engagements and things like that. So all of that is kept up to date on the website.
Amazing. And we'll put all Sarah's information in the show notes, transcripts too. So you can just go to workology.com, click on her episode, and get all her information and be able to connect with her there directly. So thank you again so much for taking the time to chat with us.
Thank you so much. It was so much fun.
It's really important for us as HR leaders to learn more about how to support ourselves so that we can support the rest of the organization. Burnout is real. Boundaries are important, and there are cognitive skills that can help you be better at setting them. Thank you to Sarah for such a powerful and practical conversation. If you're an HR leader ready to rethink your career, don't give up until you take the steps to create a better workplace for you first and your organization. Thank you for joining the Workology Podcast, sponsored by Upskill HR and ACE the HR Exam. This podcast that you're listening to is for the disruptive workplace leader who's tired of the status quo. My name is Jessica Miller-Merrell, and until next time, visit Workology.com to listen to all our podcast episodes. We have almost 500 of the Workology Podcast. I'll see you soon.